All right, so today I'd like to talk about Akwaeke Emezi's debut novel, Freshwater. Truly a queer coming-of-age novel like no other. I will mention a little bit of a trigger warning, though, for sexual assault and self-harm, just so you know. Okay. This book is brutal and it explores trauma and the reverberations of that trauma. It does so within this young girl's body that is stuffed full of God spirits, kind of like a swarm of bees nested in her body or her mind somehow. So this girl's name is Ada, but she's not our main narrator. Most of the information we get as readers comes from the God spirits inside her, which are called Ogbanji in Nigerian Igbo cosmology. Translated, Ogbanji means children come and go. They're understood to be trickster spirits. They're often born within the body of a newborn child and then die early in childhood, and then they just are reborn again and again to the parents. It's a kind of torment to the parents. This book, though, explores the existence of the Ogbanji child that does not die. Ada and her spirit survive into adulthood, and they fragment from exposure to these deeply human violences. So this book goes into the difficult, intimate brutalities of rape, of molestation, abuse, addiction, self-harm, mutilation, suicide. But it also pulls into scope these larger systemic violences of colonialism and heteropatriarchy. So because it's largely narrated by the Ogbanji spirits, these heavy, fleshy, topics aren't spoken about in the way maybe Western readers are trained to understand stories with these topics. The narration is a lot more interested in Ada's path to survival and her ability to integrate that multiplicity within her. So this journey of being more than human and stuffed in an earthbound body, in the process of building these bridges between spirit and flesh, and in moving away from this idea of the singular self. So there are three different narrators of this novel. There's the swarm of spirits in Ada, known to the reader as we, who narrate the majority of the book. And then we have Asugara, the so-called beast self. And then we have Ada herself, who only narrates like 4 chapters of the book. So we begins the book and initially is kind of lying dormant in Ada's body, but it becomes more active, or they become more active within Ada as a response to trauma that she experiences in her childhood. So they get more and more control within her body and within influencing her. Besides Ada, the only other individual distinct character within the body besides the swarm are Asugara and another being called Saint Vincent. So these two actually come into being because of trauma to Ada as well, but later in her life. So we see this fragmentation of self, both as the cause and as the solution to these human traumas. Both Asugara and we deal with Ada's traumas with troubling rituals of self-harm and disassociation in order to fulfill 2 goals, And it's to feed their own insatiable hungers, and it's to protect Ada from further harm, in their view. So Asugara, the beast self, is this powerful, sensuous, destructive, mirror image of Ada. She manifests from the god's form as the hungry protective force that Ada needs to survive, but sometimes her methods to protect Ada can seem cruel and ill-intentioned. So the gods, as not fleshly beings, don't understand all the intricacies of humanity. And when they're suddenly thrust into a body, right, that they can satiate all of these animalistic hungers that come with a body. And they don't hesitate the way that humans maybe are socialized to hesitate. There's also an element to the Obanji where they feel this constant pull back to their, what they call their brother sisters, right? They're other spirits in the womb of the snake god, the python god, Allah. So, and that's where all Obanji come from. So this swarm of gods, they're trapped in Ada, they're ravaged by these bodily hungers, and they want to satiate them, and they're also wanting desperately to return home. So that's kind of why you see what we understand as so much violence to Ada's body by Asugara in particular. She takes over Ada's body for what is often unprotected sex. She has Ada stop eating. She needs blood sacrifice in the form of self-harm. They're not necessarily a malevolent force in her, but they certainly aren't harmless to her either. And so we see this other individual entity, Saint Vincent. He isn't actually God spawn. So they say that he originates within Ada somehow, in Ada's own mind. And he's been there perhaps, as long as the rest of them have. We, right, suspects perhaps if Ada's traumas hadn't fragmented her, she and Vincent would be a united identity, which is a really interesting way to pull in that queer aspect in another way. So Saint Vincent is, he's a gentle masculine entity. When he first appears, he can't quite take over the body the way Asugara can, but he makes this masculine dream body, essentially, that he can ride, is how they say it, within Ada's mind. And then when he eventually is able to take over the body, he has to kind of neutralize it, transform it, right? Gender transformation so that he feels more comfortable. So he'll bind the chest initially, and then after a while, Ada's body actually gets breast reduction surgery to make it more easily customizable for the writer. The three individuals, Ada, Asugara, and Saint Vincent, are able to meet and interact in what is referred to as the marble of the Ada's mind, where they appear in their own dream bodies. As the novel goes on, we become aware of all the ways Ada's physical body, right, is changing through the influence of these entities inside of her. So Asugara, when she's first able to possess the body, she goes to a salon and asks them to cut her long hair close to the scalp, which all the women are horrified by, right? And this makes the body look more like Asugara's dream body self. So she starves Ada as well. So the body is shrinking and getting more angular. She has all the scars from Ada's self-harm that have collected along the body over the years. And then St. Vincent, of course, elects for the breast reduction surgery. So in Igbo culture, it's believed that the only way to stop an Obanji from continuing that cycle of dying and being reborn is to scar or mark the body so that it can be recognized when it comes back. So this transforming the body that they inhabit begins this process of becoming embodied, right, and seen. By the end of the novel, the body is understood as a shared space, liminal in the way that it appears, existing in this in-between space, right, and embracing the full multiplicity of its existence. Despite attempts to get rid of each other, no entity ends up conquering any other, and there are kind of ties to colonialism with that as well, references to the corruptors in history. So they all decide that they've lived in this body for its whole lifetime. They're finally understood within it because it's been transformed in this way and queered, right? reincarnated without the physical death that Okbanji often bring. So this novel, it just stands as a powerful affirmation of queer Black resilience, of creating home within the body in a world that erects borders and forces diaspora as methods of subjugation and domination, right? Of learning to thrive in this very queer in between. So I could say a lot more on this book, but I'm going to end it here. Freshwater. Thanks for listening.